If you've ever wanted to clearly learn how to use shared preferences in Flutter, then this series is for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the studio. In this tutorial, we'll explore how to use shared preferences into our Flutter applications. The timestamps to the different parts of the tutorial will be listed in the description because I value your time, so let's get to it. I'm also thrilled to share that I've kicked off a newsletter. If you're up for a dose of exciting updates and interesting tidbits from yours truly, check out the link in the description. In this tutorial, we'll have a look at what shared preferences is, its benefits and drawbacks, why to use shared preferences, when to use it and when not to use it. We'll also set up shared preferences into a Flutter application, write to it, read from it, update and also remove an entry, and we implement all these functionalities into a Flutter application. And lastly, we'll also talk about the best practices and tips. Shared preferences is a data storage solution that allows you to read and write simple key value pairs. If you have a relatively small collection of key values that you'd like to save, you can use shared preferences. Shared preferences has a number of benefits. It provides a straightforward API to save and retrieve key value pairs. The data stored in shared preferences remains even after the app is closed or the device is rebooted, unlike variables in memory. Also, accessing shared preferences is relatively fast, making it suitable for small, frequently accessed data. You can also store various primitive data types, boolean, int, float, long, string, without much hassle. So what are some of the drawbacks of shared preferences? Shared preferences are suitable for storing small amounts of data, primitive types, making them unsuitable for large data sets or complex data structures. Also, data stored in shared preferences is not encrypted by default. So sensitive information stored using shared preferences could potentially be accessed if the device is rooted or if other apps have access to the same shared preferences. They are not ideal for storing complex or structured data types such as arrays, lists, or objects. For such cases, other storage options like SQLite databases or file storage might be more appropriate. All data is stored in a single XML file, so which can make it challenging to manage and organize data if your app has many preferences. And lastly, there's no error handling and throws passing errors as runtime exceptions. So why would you use shared preferences? It allows very easy storage and retrieval of data. It offers a very lightweight and efficient solution compared to more complex options. It's efficient for small data sets. Those are the main ones. When can you use shared preferences? There are a number. It's a convenient way to store user preferences, settings, or other small pieces of data locally for quick retrieval and updating. So one of the things is for storing user preferences such as themes, selection, language settings, and sound preferences, or any user-specific configurations that enhance the app's usability, you can use shared preferences. It also helps in when you want the app to remember certain choices made by the user across sessions, that is managing app state. You can also store small pieces of data fetched from the internet like API tokens, user credentials, that is more of like caching lightweight data, but less sensitive data, of course. Next thing will be persisting settings across app sessions, where we retain settings across different sessions in the app. We can also use it when we want to handle simple preferences within the application. We want to store non-sensitive information. As we mentioned earlier, it's not an type of data storage solution that supports or handles security that well. It has no encryption. Another thing will be handling app configuration changes. You can use shared preferences for that. For example, device rotation or app backgrounding. Another thing will be accessing data quickly if you want. When you want a quick read and write operation without overhead, you can use shared preferences. So when can we not use shared preferences? This is when we have large or complex data. Avoid using shared preferences for large data sets or complex relational data structures. For such cases, you may want to use maybe SQLite or Room or other storage solutions. Again, sensitive information without encryption. Whilst shared preferences can store data, including sensitive information, it's best to encrypt such data before storing it in shared preferences or opt for a more secure storage mechanism like Android Key Store. So let's proceed to set up shared preferences. Great. Now let's create our fitness app, which we'll call FitFlow. And we're going to head over to our IDE and create a new application, new Flutter application. Create. We're going to create an empty application and call our app FitFlow. Let's enter that. So here's our application, which has the bare minimum, the basic structure. So we're going to head over to the lib folder. And since we created an empty application, our main dot is very minimal. So now what we're going to do is we're going to install a number of dependencies that we're going to use in our application. So back to our terminal. First thing we're going to install, add the shared preferences dependency. So just run the command flutter pub add shared preferences. Then we'll proceed to install two more dependencies. These are mainly for user interaction. So we're going to run flutter pub add multi-select. It's a certain type of dropdown. And then we're going to add another dependency or a package called vertical picker. It's a special type of picker. So now here are our dependencies, the three of them. Now let's head over to main.dart. Great. So the first thing we're going to do, we are going to create an instance of shared preferences, and we're going to use a singleton pattern in this Flutter application. What that basically means is that we're going to create the instance at the top of the main.dart file so that it can be accessed throughout the application, and we're able to keep this the shared preferences as a singleton, so it will be used within the whole application. Great. So to do that, we'll just define it here, shared preferences. There is a package we have imported, and then we're going to give on the name of our instance as pref. There we have it. The next thing we're going to do, we want to get the instance. Now we're going to go, and what we want to do is read from the disk and be able to get initialize this variable to whatever is received or read from the disk in our mobile device. So shared preferences, again, it's a local data storage solution. That means it's actually being stored in the mobile device, and it's mainly being stored in the it's stored as an XML file, and it's stored in the specific app directory. For example, for FitFlow, the files for FitFlow are stored in a specific directory, and inside it there's a folder called shared preference or shared prefs. Let me just write it here, shared prefs. So inside this shared prefs, that's where our file is stored. So we need to read it from the disk first so that you can be able to pick the load whatever has been saved or stored in the XML file. If there is none at the point of creating or setting anything in our shared preference, it's going to add that. So first things first, we're going to define it before the run up, and to make sure that the line of code that we're going to add is actually executed, we need to use the widget flutter binding. and then we just call the method ensure initialized. What this does is, it specifies to the compiler that please run the lines of code that are before the run up before running the run up itself. So that it ensures the initialization of whatever code that we enter here before the run up. So what we're going to do next, we're going to define or initialize our prefs variable. So is equals to, it's going to perform we'll need an await, we need to wait for this to be initialized, so we need to define our main method with async, and then we proceed to initialize it. Await shared preferences dot get instance. You do it as simple as that. So once we have this, we'll be able to load and pass the shared preferences for this app from the disk into our variable that we have designed, our singleton variable. And then once that is done, it will proceed to call the run app. Great. So now that we have this, we'll proceed now to design our app. So we have a material app and we have a simple scaffold here. Instead of defining this here, what we're going to do is we're going to design a specific screens. So we're just going to define a folder called screens, and then inside here I'm going to have my first screen, which will be a landing screen, what the user will see at the moment the app has been loaded. So let's design that. So we're going to have a stateful widget. So stateful, Flutter stateful widget, and we're going to name our state class as landing screen. Great. Now that we have that, so we're going to do a return of a scaffold. So I'll just need to proceed in our main.dart, and we're going to specify the landing screen. So we're just going to say home landing screen. And now because we're going to do some, we're going to perform a number of routing operations. We're going to route a lot because we'll have multiple screens. What I'm going to use, I'm going to initialize a route here, which will be like this, then define all my routes in the main.dart, so that whenever this route is called, it's going to call the landing screen. That's basically that. And then I'm just going to remove this. Let's see. So let's just remove the cons on the material app, and there we have it. So let's run our app first so that you can see our blank screen. So there is our blank screen. Now let's proceed to design our landing screen. So what our landing will have is just a representation of the app, of what the app is, and just introducing the user into the app. So it will be more of design. We won't interact with shared preference here yet. So let's design it. So first things first, in our Fleet Flow application, there's a folder called assets just created, and it has a simple image, a fitness image over here. So that's what we're going to use as our background for the landing screen. So before using an asset over here, you have to make sure that on pubspec.yum we have defined the location of our assets. So let's define that. Just have to make sure I set it in the right indent, assets. So we're just going to define our directory of our assets as assets, which is this. So you can either continue to proceed to specify the name of the file itself, or you can just specify this directory itself, and it will be able to reach or be able to detect all the files that are inside that folder. Okay, now let's proceed to our landing screen. So how we're going to do it, we're going to use a stack. A stack is a type of widget where you get to display widgets on top of each other. So we need first the background that we have, the image that we have. Then on top of it, we're going to have a simple container that will create a gradient effect, and then we'll have our texts on top of it. So let's start by defining the body, and then we'll have stack. Stack holds children, so we're going to have children here, and then we're going to proceed to define our first child, which will be an image. Image, and our image will be an asset, and we'll just specify the directory assets fitness jpg. There we have it. Let me just remove the debug banner. That's better. So now let's fit this image into our screen, to our scaffold. So let's proceed to design it. So we're just going to come here. After defining our image, we're going to define the fit. How do we want it to fit? So we'll just say box fit dot fit height, and then we're going to proceed to define our sized box. We give it a container with a specific height so that it can actually fit through that specific container. But instead of using container, we'll use size box. It's similar to the container. So we're just going to define the height that we want it to fit in. Query.ofContext.size.height. Just remove const. Great. We're off to a great start. Then next thing we're going to do is add the next child. So the next child is a container. Inside our container, we're going to have a height. It's also going to carry the height of the screen. And also it's going to carry the height, the width of the screen. Next, we're going to decorate it using box decoration. And then we're going to define our gradient. So we're going to use a linear gradient, and then we're going to specify our colors, which will be 2. So we're going to have colors.black, and we're going to have colors.black 26. It's lighter, so that part of the top part we're going to see part of the image, or the image that we have, and then we want it to darken as it goes down. That's the idea. So let's continue. Next thing will be to specify, let's specify begin. So what begin? Alignment, begin. Begin alignment bottom center, and then end alignment dot top center. So it's starting off with the black starts from the bottom and then comes upwards as it becomes more transparent. So we'll get to see the top part of the image. Great. And then next thing will be in our linear gradient. Let's just set the stops, because right now we just want to see The transparency, we want to set it more on the top part. As you can see, we can see the image of the lady from the top to we can see the feet. We want to darken that part a little bit because we're going to set some text widgets on top of it. So we want it to be visible, right? So we're just going to set 0.3 and 1.0. Great, now that's better. Now that we have that, let's focus on the next child. So we are done with that child. Now let's focus on the next child. So for the next child, we're just going to add it inside. We're going to add it inside the container because it has the option to add a child. And we're going to have a column. And inside here, we're going to define a few children, starting with a text widget. So we'll have a text and we'll say create a workout plan, and then we're going to style it, give it a font size of 28 and a color deep orange. That's the theme that we're going with. So there we have it. So next let's just set the main axis and set it to .end. Great. And then next thing we're going to do is, let me see if this alignment. Let me see alignment. Alignment dot center. Okay, that one doesn't help. Okay, let's just proceed. So we have our main axis dot end. Then we're just going to come here and let me just set this to const for now. So another thing I want to do on the main.dart will be to define the color scheme for this part. So we mentioned that one of the use cases that we're using shared preferences for is to handle the user preferences, and one of the most common user preferences is setting dark mode and light mode on an app, and we'll get to do that. So what I want to do, I want to make sure I set a color scheme here. Let's first set it as light, and this will allow us not to enter so many how do I call it, more by aesthetic, setting the colors. Let's allow because if you specify certain colors and then we decide to set the specific color scheme to dark to light, there'll be a controversy. But now if we just set it to light, you find that when it's light, we don't need to specify the text as black or white, because if it's light, it knows that the text has to be something of a light color, which is white. And if it converts to dark mode, it's supposed, or if it's light mode, the text is supposed to be of a darker theme, which is black. And if it is of a dark mode, the text has to be of a lighter color, which is white. So if we decide to start setting our own colors on mainly texts and buttons, it might create some conflict. So all I'm going to do is I'm just heading over to the main.dat on the material app, and I'm just going to define a theme that will help me just to make sure that I'm not setting up certain themes within the app that will create some controversy when I'm trying to play around with the theme of the material app when we set it to dark mode or light mode. So all you have to do is just say theme data. I hope it makes sense. Then now we're going to just call the color scheme, and all I'm doing is just, for now, I'm just using the color scheme dot light. Let's use that. Of course, because our app, our landing screen is okay, it will just retain as is, because we have set our container to have a specific gradient of black to a lighter black. That's okay. That's how the landing screen will look like. But within the app after this, we expect some changes to happen depending on the type of theme that we set. So we've just set that so that I make sure I do not come here and set maybe colors.white, because I'll have to remove it, because in the point where we change the theme to light and we already set the text to colors.white, we won't be able to see the text widget, right? So next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the rest of our text widgets, which is to fit. Let's just finish the message and then let's style it. If it doesn't make sense, whatever I've just come from saying, you'll get to see it in a few. Because the landing screen, the settings will just be the same. That's why I'm setting the color for the text. Next thing will be the font size. 24 should be smaller than the previous one. And then let's just set it to bold. Great. Let me just set a padding between the two by setting top as that. Okay, great. Another thing we're going to do is define a space. You can either use a padding or even define a simple sized box with a specific height. I'm trying to avoid using padding a lot because everything will look padded. So that's just a way of like creating a space. And then we're going to proceed to define the last thing, which will be a button. And this button will have an icon. So we're going to use elevated button.icon. And since we've done that, it's going to create an error because we have const on our column. So let's just set it on the respective places. There we have it. And then on pressed, we're going to add the logic here. For our icon, we're going to simply have const icon. Let me just enter this. Icons dot keyboard arrow right. And then for our label, we're going to have a text widget that says start now, and we're going to style it. Let me see. Yes, style. And we're going to give it a font size of 16, a font weight bold, and then I'm just going to repeat and create another small sized box over here with a height of 50. Just add const, and there we have it. So that's our first screen. In terms of the design of the button, we're not yet done because we're using, our theme is more of an orange theme. So let's just call the style attribute and proceed to call elevated button.style from. Inside here, let's specify first the fixed size, which will be size. The width will be 150 and then the height will be 50. And then we'll proceed to define the shape, and we're going to use the stadium border like so. And then lastly, we're going to set the background, and our background will be deep orange accent. There we have it. Beautiful. So now we're done with the landing screen. The next thing will be now when the user lands on this screen, the next process is to ask them a few questions. We want to get a few informations like the age, the weight, and even lastly, we'll have asked them for a username that they want to be identified with when interacting with the app. So those are the next steps we're going to work on. And then what all this information we'll be getting and setting in shared preferences. Okay, so now we can leave this screen. Before we leave it, let's just create a simple screen. Our first screen will be will allow the user to specify the gender. So let's work on that first. So we'll create a new file and we'll just say about dot dot. Great. So in our about dot dot, we'll create a simple stateful widget, state class, and call it about. Wait, this messed up. About screen. We'll have a scaffold. So what I'm going to do is head over to main.dat on our root. I'm just going to create a new root for about screen. So we'll just give it the name about, and we'll just call the context const about screen. Great. So in our landing screen, we're just going to head over to our elevated button, and what we're going to do is on press, we're just going to call navigator.push named, and we're going to call the about root name. Sorry, there we have it. So let's just refresh this, and then if we click on start now, it directs us to the about screen. Now let's design it. I'll close this and main.dat. Okay. So for our about screen, we have our scaffold, then we're going to have a body, and we're going to call the safe area because we're not going to be using an app bar. We just want to make sure the rest of the contents are in a safe area. So we're going to proceed to create a column which will have children. Let's just set padding for this column. We just want to set it at the top, right, left, and bottom. Let's set, yeah. We want to be able to contain everything because we won't be using a single child scroll view. So everything will be inside that scaffold itself. There's no scrolling involved. So we want to make sure we're going to have a button at the top. We want to make sure that it's actually elevated and not at the end of the scaffold. At least elevated a little at the top so that the user can actually tap on it. So in our column, we'll have a few things starting with a headline that asks the user what is your gender, and then a simple tagline. And because this will be common in our different screens, I'm just going to create a simple widget that we can reuse. So I'm just going to create a folder called utils, and then I'm going to create a folder called widgets.dat, and inside there I'm going to have my classes. So we're going to have a simple stateless class called headline, and inside here we're going to be passing a string called headline. Then we pass it as a props that's required, this dot headline. And then what we're going to have here will be a text, and inside this text, let's see, inside this text we're going to have the headline, and let's just style it so that we get to see how it looks. So we're going to have set the font size to 24 because it's a headline. Then we're going to have a font weight of bold. So simple as that. So we just pick our headline, head over to about, and we'll proceed to call it. So we'll just import it, and then we just get the required. And what we're going to pass here will be the text, tell us about yourself. There we have it. And then I'm just going to proceed to the way we're going to return it. Then we're going to continue and design a tagline, which will also be a stateless. And our tagline will need a prop pass of type string. And then we're just going to have a text tagline. Going to style it. Font size 16. Let's just set it to 18. And then we're going to have a text align say at the center, and then just put a padding to create a space between the headline and the tagline. Top 10, right 10, and left 10. So as simple as that. Then let's call it over here. I'll just say tagline. And our tagline will be to give you a better experience. We need to know your gender. There we have it. Great. So let's try something here on the main dot. If I decide to set the color scheme to dark, as you can see, that's what I meant. So I'm not setting the colors of these text widgets because I'm just going to use the color scheme. If you set it to dark, it knows how to display the text widgets in their respective colors, which is a light color. And if it's set to light, it will set to a dark color. So let's go back to our light. And right now we are setting it in main.dat by coding it, but we're going to have a section where we'll allow the user to set to dark mode or light mode, and in that process the app will automatically convert. Okay, next back to our about. So now we're going to add our two gender values, male and female. So to do that, we're going to set them with an enum type. So let's create a new file called constants.dat, and inside here I'm going to define the enum type called gender that will hold male and female. Great. Now back to our about. After the tagline, we're going to proceed to design our widget. We'll use a list view to generate our widgets using the enum type that we have designed on the constants.dat we have defined. Let's just remove const here. And then inside here, we're going to do a return of a clip oval. So before that, let's set our item count to be gender dot values dot length. Okay, we have an error. because of our list view, we need to set it as shrink wrap to true. Let's refresh that. Okay, so let's design our clip oval. It will hold a container, and this container will have a column that will hold two children. Our first child will be an icon. First things, let's just set it by default and set the widgets in the screen first, and then the next one will be, let's say, male. So let's continue. So for our container, it's going to help us set a color, colors.gray, and then we're going to define the width to 150, height to 150. Okay, we're making progress, and then we're going to proceed to center our values. Let's see, where is our column? Center. Okay, next thing, we're going to refactor and add a sized box and set the width to 150. Great. Okay, so what's the next thing? The next thing will be, let's style this the children. Let me just make sure that it's not scrollable, but there's no need because we don't have a single child. Scroll view to collide with it. Gesture detect. Let's set a gesture detector on our clip oval because we want the user to be able to select a specific gender. I'm just going to say on top because it's on the mobile device. Next thing, we're going to add the logic there in a minute. Let's proceed to design our icon. So we're going to have the color white, and we're going to set the size to 60. Good. Next, let's style our text widget. Let's give it a text style, colors.white, and set the font size to 16. That's better. So what else do we need to add? Let's set up padding on the gesture detector because they're joined together. So we'll set the padding on the bottom. That's nice. Okay, so we're off to a great start. So now, instead of the word male, we want to pick whatever is in our variable. So we'll just say gender.values index.name. So it shows male and female, correct? And then we're going to also design the icon that will be passed. So we're just going to create a conditioning here and say if gender.values index.name is equals to gender.male.name. If that's the case, we'll proceed to call icons.male, else we'll proceed to call icons.female. Great. So that's sorted out. What's next on our clip oval? No, on our gesture detector, because that's where the action listener is. We now need to set our logic. So what we want to do when the user selects, we need to update our key for gender to whatever the user has selected. So we just proceed to call our instance of shared preference and use set string method because we're saving a string, and then we're just going to set our keys in one place so that we do not have to so that to avoid any mistakes of misspelling our strings. So I'll just create a simple class called constant and then define the constructor, which will be private. Next thing, I'm going to list all my keys here. So we're going to have a key for dark theme. Might as well enter all of them at once. So we're just going to give it the name Fit Flow Theme. The next one will be static const pref age. We're also going to store the age, fit flow age. Another one will be static const pref gender, fit flow gender. Another one will be static const weight, which will be fit flow weight. Next we'll have pref goal, the fitness goal that the user wants to the user has goal. Next we'll have pref username. Will allow the user to set the username that they want to be identified as in the app. Then we'll have pref workouts, which will hold a list of workouts that the user prefers to see in the app. Next we'll have notifications. Will allow the user to enable or disable notifications. So those are the main ones. So what we want to call or pick is pref gender. So we'll head over to our about page and call constant.pref gender, and then the value will be gender. Let me just enter this, gender dot values index dot name. So this will come in form of type string, as you can see. Then we just set state, simple as that. So what else? So on the color gray, we also want to change it in that when the user selects, we're able to change the background color to show that it has been selected. So how do we do that is call gender, create a condition, gender dot values index name is equals to, we're going to head over to shared preference and pick what's there. Constant dot pref gender. So if they are the same, we'll proceed to set the background to our theme color, else we'll set it to gray. Okay, so currently it has set to female. Okay, so let me just refresh the shared preference. I ran this application again. Let's just refresh it. So how to clear the shared preference to see how it will look, I'll just head over to main and just run the command prefs dot clear because we're supposed to be working with a shared preference that's empty. Okay. Okay, now let me clear this and let's refresh. So with an empty shared preference, if I click on start now, both of them are colors.gray because the user hasn't selected anything. That means currently there's no key for gender. So that's why they're negative. But the moment we click, it should update. So now let's finish up because we need a button at the bottom. So just set const spacer. Const spacer, and then now we're just going to what it's doing, it's just centering our two widgets. And then now let's add our button. So we'll have two buttons. The first button will be skip this, and the other button will be next. So what skip this does, if the user does not want to specify their preference, we allow them to skip it and proceed to the next step. But if the user decides to click on next, we pick whatever that they have set as their preference and then proceed to take them to the next step. That's all we're doing. So we'll have a row set children. So our first child will be a text button dot icon. So our label will be a text widget, and we'll say skip this, and then we're missing an icon. There we have it. And yeah, then we'll add the logic there. Then let's create the elevated button. It also will have an icon. So we'll have label const text, and give it the name next. Let's add our icon. There we have it. We'll also style it. I would like to put this style in a central place because we're going to reuse this, mainly this row. We're going to reuse it in a number of screens. So to do that, I'll just head over to widgets, and I'm going to have a simple function for this. Let's give it a fixed size. Shape it. Set the background. And set the background if it's disabled. And just pick this and add it here. There we have it. So that's designed. Another thing we'll do is on our row, we just say main axis space evenly. let's say between. Yep, that's better. But now I'll skip this, doesn't have our theme color. Just head over to main.dot. We can update that inside here in our theme data so that it's uniform throughout wherever we're using text buttons. To do that, we just call the text button theme, and then we design it there. All we're saying is defining the button style and giving it a foreground color. It doesn't choose, it chooses material state property dot all. Just define color of type color, then define our color. Great, that's done. So back to our about screen. So we need to add logic here in this too. So if we decide to, so what happens on our next in this specific screen, there won't be much logic. It's more of a check to make sure that the user has selected something. So what I mean is we'll have to check if there's any value that has been set. Prefs dot constant dot prefs gender. We actually want to communicate with the instance prefs dot get string, and our key will be constant dot pref gender. So what we're just doing is saying if it's not equal to null, proceed to that, else set it as null. So in our case it's null because there's no key of such kind in our shared preference. So that's working correctly. And then what the skip will do, will just navigate to the next screen. So our next screen will be asking the user to set their age. So I'll just do a quick create a quick state class for that. Age screen, return a scaffold. Great. And then head over to my main and define a root name for it. Age. Good. And then now in our about, over here on skip, if the user decides to skip, we just let them proceed to the next screen. So it's age. And for the second part, all we're doing is we're saying if there is a value inside here, that means the user has actually selected either or. We can now proceed them to the next screen. So here we have our screen. So let's try and click on mail. As you can see, it's able to save, and let's just refresh it to see if the data has been persisted. So if we click on refresh, head over back to our app, click on start now, as you can see it has picked whatever is in the shared preference, which is great. But since I'm female, I'll just click on female and we are good. So now let's work on the next screen. So I'll just head over to our age screen. Here it is. Now let's work on it. So the design will be almost equivalent to the first one. You'll get to see that there's quite similar. So all I'll do is pick the build function here. Just carry it with me to the age. And then we're going to change the headline and everything else. So first thing, let's import the specific class, and then we'll change the headline to how old are you? And then our tagline, this helps us create your personalized plan. Great. Then we're just going to remove this. We're not going to specify the gender, just import the main dot where our singleton is. And then what we're going to do is, let me just remove all this because our onPressed will have a different logic. Okay. So if we click on next, there we have it. How old are you? This helps us create your personalized plan. So what we want is a text field in the middle. So I'll just proceed to define a text editing controller and call it age controller is equals to text editing controller. And then we're going to design our text field in the middle of this text field controller age controller. Let's define the width of this text field by wrapping it with a sized box. I'm just going to give it a width of 100, and then we're going to style it give it a font size of 40. Next, let's align it to center. Let's define the keyboard type. So we want the text input type as number. And then we'll just proceed to finish the decoration. Input decoration. And have a suffix that will hold a text widget that says years. And then we'll just give it a style. Or font size of 16. And then another thing that we can do is on our init state, we can set a value for the text field by a default value and say 30. Okay, so we're not able to see it. Okay, let's just refresh it because I've just updated the init state when I've already loaded the screen. Let me just do it quickly. Next, there we have it. Let me just write years correctly. Okay, so there we have it. So we're asking the user, how old are you? This helps us create your personalized plan. 30 years, that's the default, but we'll now allow the user to set it. And then for now, we need to work on next and skip this. So for skip this, or the next screen will be the weight, asking the user about the weight. So we'll just do weight dot and then just define a stateful widget called weight screen and return a scaffold. And then we head over to our main dot and define a root name for it. Weight const weight screen, so that in our age, what we'll do here is if the user decides to skip, we just navigate them to the next screen, which is weight. And then over here, we need to check if the user has inserted any value. So what we're going to do is, so by default, it will have a default value, right? So we're just doing a simple check. Okay, so we're saying age controller.text. If it's empty, if the user clears that value, we set it to null, else if there is a value, then that's when we can save it in our shared preference. So I'm just going to call dot set int because we need to specify the primitive type, and for age we're just using and setting an integer. We call its key pref age, Whoa, let me just import it. Okay, pref age, and then we'll just pass in age controller dot text, but it will fail because what it's expecting is an integer. That's why we specified it here. So let's pass our string to an integer, and there we have it. And then once we're done with that, that's when we'll proceed to navigate to the next screen. Great. So let's try that and see. Proceed to, right, currently we have 30. Let me change it to 27 and click on next. Now we're in our wait screen. Let's just make sure that we have persisted, but just so you know that the moment we're in the home screen, we'll have a settings page where now when we click or when we update, we get to see all the information that we have persisted in our shared preference, how that has been persisted or has been saved in our shared preferences. So we'll get to see that. Let's just head over to start now, female, but this won't work because we haven't set the value here. So what I'm going to do is we need to pick whatever has been passed, right? I hope it makes sense. So the moment I load, so currently it says age controller.text. Okay, so I can do a check here. Prefs dot get int constant dot pref age. So all I'm doing is that if it's not equal to null, oops, if it's not equal to null, let's proceed to print that out. Or there's a better way of doing this. I'll just print this. If it's null, that's when it prints 30. But now because whatever is being returned is an integer, we'll just set it to string. Simple as that. So the moment it loads the screen, it first checks if there's a value in this key. If it's there, it will display that. If it's not, it will display the default value. Let's try again. Start now. We still have our gender selected. Next, so it's displaying whatever we entered previously. So our data is being persisted correctly. Now let's work on the next screen, and the next screen will also be quite similar to age. So I'll just proceed to pick this and head over to our wait screen. Okay, so let's add our text editing controller, wait controller, and then we import our classes. So instead of how old are you, we're going to have what's your weight, and then the tagline will be you can always change this later. Change this to weight controller. Then we're just going to have the same settings, but now instead of years we'll have kgs. And then on our section here we're going to navigate to a different let's just change this weight controller. Then we just import our main.dart here. Yep, and then weight controller, but now our weight will be setting a double, and then we just change pass our string to a double. Great. And then we just need to create the next root, which is goal. So I'll just come here and say new file goal.dot, where the user will be able to specify their goals. So I'll have the goal screen, return a scaffold, head over to main.dot, specify the root name. Great. So we pick this, head over to our weight, and paste it here, paste it here. Great. And then now another thing we need to do is in our init state, we can specify a default value in our text field. First, we can do the check that we did also in the age. So we head over to shared preference and check get double constant, and I think we hadn't changed the key. We didn't change the key. I'll need to confirm that. Yep, the danger. So we have the only place that we have set is on this side. Okay, fine, we are okay. Let me just confirm there's no, okay, so that we don't mess up our work, because if we end up changing the value, it might affect the results or whenever we try to print out. So pref.get double, if it's empty, that's when we show 65 kgs, and we just need to say to string. So there we have it. So let me just refresh that, because I have worked on the init state after already displaying the screen. That's why it's not being displayed. Click on next, next. So it's saying null. It should say 65. If it's equal to null, let me try this. Else, display the value to string. Else 65. Don't know if that will work. So what we've done is we're checking if it's null. If it's null, let's just set our default value. Else, let's pick the value, but we have to handle the probability that a null value will be returned. So we just set it to 65. Let's see if that works. Click on start now. Next, next. There we have it. So we've handled the null, performed null safety. That's one of the ways. We're checking if the value is null. If it comes as null, let's set a default value. If there is a value, it may still be null, so we need to handle it because our shared preference is nullable. So we need to handle that. Okay, so now we have our 65. Let's just set maybe 60 and click on next, so it heads over to the goal screen, which is correct. I don't think we have shown skip, how skip works, so let's try and skip a few screens we see. So if I click on skip, it just heads over to the next screen. If I click on skip, it heads over to the next, and you can see we have been able to persist our value for the weight. Now let's click on next and work on the goal. Okay, so for our scaffold, I'll proceed to pick the design that we have here. Let's see, we can even pick the previous one. Close that. And then let me just import the specific classes. So for our goal, we'll just say, what's your goal? And then our tagline will be, this helps us create your personalized plan. Now that we have that, we'll need to delete this because we're not going to use a text field. And then let's just remove the logic inside here. We'll get to recreate it. Okay, so there is our screen. Now inside here, we're going to use one of the packages that we installed called Vertical Picker. It's just a cool way of actually allowing the user to pick a list of items instead of a drop down. So I'll just call it Vertical Picker. I think we installed it. Let's see. Here it is. So I should be able to find it. Comes out, comes. Let me try and import it. There we have it. So if I proceed to call it, here it is. So let's fill in the blanks. So we have items, and for me to, instead of hard coding it here, let's just head over to our constants and define them. So we'll have cardio, weightlifting, so these are the ones that we're going to populate. So I'll just set it here. So in our items, we're going to generate a list, and it's going to pick whatever is in the goals. How we call it is constant. Let me import this. Dot goals dot length. Okay. And then we're going to return a text widget that will display all those goals that we have set. So we'll have constant dot goals index. So on selected, we'll have index selected, returns an index, and then for item height, we can set it to the size of the screen. Divide by 10. We have an error here. Let's see. Okay, we don't. Okay, let's see. You can already see our goals. Let me finish up. So we have our items, displayed on selected change. This is where we'll add some logic where we'll interact with shared preference, and we have a great. Then we can just add a border color. And just set some thickness. And then let's wrap this inside of a size box with a height of 200. And then we can define a left margin and a right margin and set loop as false. Yeah, that's better. So now we get to see our specific goals and the user can select from them. Okay. The next thing will be now, if the user selects, we need to update whatever that they have selected. So we'll head over to call our instance of shared preference, and then we set string. So let's just import it. We are saving a string, so we'll need to set string constant.pref goal, and then we just proceed to call constant dot goals, and then we pick using the index selected, just like that. Then we just do a set state. Great. So the next thing is our usual at the bottom. So now the next screen that we're going to look at is where now we finally ask the user to set their username, and then we get into the home screen. So let's just create that quickly. Username dot STFL username screen. Then we'll have a scaffold, and then I head over to main dot define the root name, and then this is what I'm going to pass in our goal. Navigator dot push named. There we have it. And then in this section, we're just going to do it as we did in the when we're allowing the user to select male or female. Just want to make sure that the user has selected something. So get string constant dot pref goal. If it's equals to null, else let's pass it to the next. Now let's see it work. I'll just refresh this. Click on start now. Female, next. 27, next. 60, next. Now let's select. So since we haven't selected anything, and in the shared preference we haven't set anything, the next button is disabled. That's correct. So now if we decide to select weightlifting, as you can see, it ends up being enabled. This is what has been saved. So we click on next. So now we're in the username screen. Let's proceed. So for a username, we'll ask the user to set their username. So that means we'll need a text field. So I'll just head over to one of the classes, mainly age, and just pick the UI as is. Great. And then let's just import the respective classes. What's your username? set the username you'll be identified with. Okay, then let's just define a text editing controller. Oh, and that's what we're going to replace over here. Username controller. We'll set the font to 24, and then we want to handle on change. But before we do that, let's just, on our decoration, we don't need the suffix anymore. But what we're going to set is the hint text. Set username. Just give it a hint style. Font size 18. Okay. What next? Can set the color of the enabled border. Call the border side. And then we set the color. So we'll do the same for focus. Border. Okay. We still have an error in the rest of the, that's why we're not able to see. There we have it. Okay. So I'll just increase the width of the size box so that we get to see the whole hint text. What else? On change. We need to listen to the change that's being made. Value. Now that we have that, let's now head over to our skip this. For skip this, we need to head over to home. So we'll just create a simple screen for that. Home.dot. We're finally on the home screen, or getting there, that is. So we'll have the home screen, scaffold. Let's just define the root name. Great. So I'll just head over here and set this to home. And then in our elevated, what we're going to do is just check if the user has inserted any username. If it's empty, set to null, else. We now proceed to perform the logic, which is just setting whatever the user has provided, which will be of type string. Let's see if I have imported this. The set string constant dot, let's see, pref username. Then we pass in the username dot text. Then we proceed to navigate to home. So let's do another check up here, where we say username controller dot text. check if there's a value for this. Get string. You'll get to see how to use get string list in a few. Constant dot pref username. So if it's equal to null, set it as empty, else proceed to call this. There we have it. So let's try and set a value, a username like, oh boy, okay. So we need to remove the keyboard type, or you can set it to name. So let's try that again. Okay, let me just refresh this. Start now. Next, next, next. Let's set the name. Click on next. Refresh. There we have it. So it has persisted that information. Now let's work on the home screen. So for our home screen, all we're going to do is on our up bar, we're going to have a functionality that will allow us to, an icon button that will allow us to navigate to the settings page, where I think that's the main part of this application. But the idea was to create like a flow in terms of an actual application. Otherwise, we would have just created a user settings screen. But that's where we'll get to see read all the values, most of the values that we have in our shared preferences. We'll also have a functionality to clear all the data in our shared preferences if we need to, and also get to delete or remove. That's the name in shared preferences, remove. So we've been able to write a lot, as you can see, until this far that we have come. So our home screen won't have any logic on shared preferences other than the icon button that we'll have on the up bar. So what I'm going to do in the next few seconds or minutes, we'll be just designing the home screen of how our fitness app would look like. Then we just go straight to the settings app. So that will be fast. So this is the icon button that will navigate us to the settings. Let's just click on next. There we have it. So since our bot has the theme color of purple, and that's not our theme color, let me show you how to set that. So let's have an app bar theme. And we'll proceed to set the background. Sorry. So that's all you have to do. Back to our home. Let's continue. So we'll add the logic here that will direct us to the settings. Let me just create that settings screen. It will be a stateful widget. Settings screen. Return a scaffold. Let's just set a root name for it. Okay, so over at home, all I'll do is say navigator.push named, and then we specify the root name there. And let's head over to the body and work on it quickly, because I'm just going to generate a simple list view with some widgets. Okay, let's do that. So we'll have a single child scroll view. Beautiful. Scroll view, and it will hold a column. So the first thing that we're going to have is a row. Better yet, let's have a rich text, because we want to display a greeting to the user. So we're going to say hello, and then we're going to display the name. How do we do this? Rich text tends to confuse me. We have rich text, then we need to define a text span that will have an attribute of text. So our first text will be hello, and then we'll give it a style, font size 24, and this is the only place. Actually, I've just realized we're going to communicate with shared preference over here. Yep. So after this style, we'll have children of types text span, and it will be just one text span. That's text, and then we'll proceed to call our instance of shared preference get string constant dot pref username. Just remove that. Const username. So we're picking the username from our shared preference. Just forgot we were doing that. Yeah. And then let me just style it. Style text style font weight bold. Yep, so it's actually displaying the name that we had saved as our username. Let me just set padding on this column. Everything is congested on the left side. Refactor padding. That's better. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is, after this rich text, we want to build a list. Let me just set the shrink wrap before I forget, and make sure that the physics never scrollable, so it does not collide with a single child scroll view. Now we have an item builder, so we need to have a list of exercises. Let's just set that in our constants. Static const exercises. We'll have incline hammer curls, wide grip, barbell curl, Let's have this. Let's just add a semi. So now let's design, we're going to design a few cards that will display those specific exercises that we have set in our constants. So we'll start by return. Let's create a small stateless widget for that and call it exercise. So we're going to have a card. Let me just pass this first in our home so that I get to see it all populate. Let's proceed to import our class. Enter. So I need us to go back to our stateless class and design it. So let's design it quickly. So we'll have a card that will hold a column. So one of our child will be a text widget that will read, we'll need to pass a props over here. So let's make sure that we're passing a string exercise dot exercise, and then we're going to pass that here. So I'll just remove the const. Let's style it. And give it a font size of 20 and a font weight. So in our home, we're expecting to pass something here, which is exercise, and that's why we're going to pick, let's pick this constant dot exercises, pick a specific index, right? Oh yeah, invalid, not inclusive. Let's see, exercises. Oh, we haven't set the item count. Makes sense. Constant dot exercises dot length. Let's refresh that. So there we have our card. So let's proceed to design it further. So we'll just head over to our stateless. Continue to work on it. So other than the style, we need to add, let's position it. Let's add the other text widget. It will actually be an action chip. So that's an action chip, just showing the level of the exercise. Now we need to position this, guys. Before we do that, let me set the background of this. So the background will be, and then let's set an on pressed. Do we have a disabled color? Let's see how that will look. Great. So we don't need the background. No, you're not able to see the text properly. So what I'll do is set the background again to deep. And just set an on pressed. That's not doing anything. Yeah, now you're able to see the text. So we have designed, added the style on the text widget and then on the action chip. Now I just want to position these guys. But before that, let's just set the main axis to center. Be able to feel that because it's set. So let's just define the size box here. The items are quite compressed. So let's define a height using the dimension of the screen. Dot size dot height. How does that look? Great. So we're able to see the effect of this. Now I just want to position them. Refactor. Positioned. Okay, let's just remove that. There's no effect. Because I think because you set this one to my main axis alignment dot center, let me return it and try and remove this. Let's remove this and see what happens. Nope. Okay, so let's just return it and then I just remove whatever I just added here. Makes no sense. Okay, we can stick to that. So that's how our exercise cards look like. And I think that we can move a step forward by allowing the user to click and displaying the exercise details, but I don't see the need of that because what we'll have in the other screen will be just text, static default text. So let's proceed to the settings screen where we continue to explore and interact with shared preferences, but that's just the main home screen, how it looks, and we're able to display the correct username from the shared preference. So we'll head over to home and just confirm we actually set the navigation of the icon button to settings. So that means if we click on the settings, we are now in the settings screen. So now let's work on this so that we get to see a view of whatever the values that we have interacted with, the keys we have interacted with in the shared preference. So I'll just close everything else and stick with the settings part. Okay. So let's start with an up bar. That means I need to remove the const up bar, and then we'll define a title that just says profile. Great. And then we'll add an action here, and whatever we're going to add here is an icon button. This will allow us to clear all the data in the shared preference. Delete forever and give it a size of 30. Yes. So the logic we're going to add here is we're going to call the instance of our shared preference, and then we'll proceed to call the method clear. This is a method that clears all the data in our shared preference instance. Okay, we'll get to try this. Let's first see the values that we have, and then we try and clear and see. Or better yet, let me click on this. I refresh the app. You'll get to see that we'll be asked for, let me see, in our landing, there's something we need to set in our landing. You can see this navigator.push named context. We're calling the about screen, right? So the whole idea of the app is that once the user sets this information, the age, the weight, and all that, whenever we run the app, we shouldn't expect the user should not expect to be asked this information over and over again. So we can do a simple check. So if I click on start now, you can see we're going back to being asked to select the gender. So what I can do, if the user has already entered this information, we can just proceed to the home page. So we're going to put, let's add a logic for that. So here it is. So this is how it looks. It's just an if else. We're just doing checks. So let's go through it. It's very straightforward. All we're doing is that we're checking if the user has actually set the gender. We don't have to show them the gender screen. We can proceed to check on the next screen. If they've provided the age, we don't need to show them the age screen. If they've provided the weight, they don't have to we don't have to display the weight screen, neither the goal or the username. If they all these values have been set, we just proceed to direct them to the home. That's all we are doing. But in case the user has inserted the gender, but the next screen, which is age, they haven't set the age, we can display that. So here it is. We proceed to display the age screen if they haven't displayed it, or display the weight screen if they haven't set the weight, and the rest as you can see. But if they have provided all this information, let's just direct them to the home screen. They'll still have the settings page or settings screen for them to update anything that they may have set and they may want to change. So if I refresh this app now, if I click on start now, it will direct me to the home screen because we have been inserting information. We set our gender to female, we provided the age, the weight, and all that. So now I'm able to get into the home screen directly. So let's go back to our settings. There's something I'm trying to do here. So on our delete, we have called the method clear in our shared preference. If I decide to click on this and we decide to refresh this app, it should go back in. It's more of like a factory resetting. We should be asked again all the information that we had inserted initially, because our shared preference instance is empty. It has no key values. So let's click on this. If I click on that and decide to refresh the whole app, now if I click on start now, what we expect is to be asked to go to the gender screen and the age screen and the weight screen, because there's no value. There are no values for these specific keys. So when I click on start now, as you can see, and if you look at the gender screen, it's displaying as it should in terms of if the user hasn't set any gender, this is how it looks. Remember, we set our button to disabled if there's no value at all that has been provided. So let's click on female, click on next, enter our age. We need to sort that. Next, and we can set to 60. Next, and select weightlifting. Next, and define a username next. So we're in the home page. And if I decide one more time to reload the app and just click on start now, it will direct us straight to the home page. I hope it makes sense. So this, what it does is clearing all the values in the shared preference. Now let's continue back to the settings. Now let's work on the body. Single child scroll view, child. We're going to have a column, and inside our column we'll start off with let's display a concept of a profile image. So I'll just have a simple circle avatar, and this circle avatar will be, let's set a radius of 50, and then set the background to white 54, and then let's define a child for it. Icons.person. Let's set the size to 50 and the color to black. Next, let's continue. Let's wrap our circle avatar with a container. And inside the container, let's just set a simple padding. Then set the margin. And then set a box decoration. And inside here, we'll just create a shape. Dot circle. And define a color. So there's our simple profile image. Then let's proceed to, let me just set padding here. Padding. Next, we're going to have a text widget. I want to show the concept of remove. We haven't seen how to remove a specific key. We've just seen how to clear the whole shared preference. So to do that, I'll just create a simple text widget that will hold the username, and then we'll have the option to allow the user to remove this. Okay, so we'll start off by displaying it. To display it, we just head over to the instance and we get string. Let's just import it. No, it's okay. Constant dot pref username, and then we'll style it. Oh, the wrong place. Style, text style. Just give it a font weight. And a font size. There we have it. Next is we're going to do a check. if this information is null, we'll create an action chip that asks the user to set a username. So we'll get to see it in a few. Let's just first create now a feature that will allow us to delete or to remove this specific key so that we get to set it. So we'll have a function here for that. Let me just define it here quickly. So what it's going to be, set username, pass in the build context, and then what we're going to return is a show dialog, which will return an alert dialog. We'll get to design this. Let's just make sure the function is being called here. Okay, so that when the user clicks on the action chip, it will pop an alert dialog that will allow them to enter a username and save into the shared preference. So now that we have that, let's create the feature that's supposed to allow us to remove a username. So I'm just going to use text.reach, which tends to confuse me sometimes, but we got this. So it's going to have children of type text span. Is it text span or inline? Inline. So the reason why sometimes we use this is if you want to display an icon and a text. So we can use a widget span for that. And then the widget span will be a text. Do we really need a widget span? Okay, let's use a widget span to display a text button. Const text. We need an icon, so we don't actually need this. Let me just clear the errors first and then we sort that one out. Wow, we'll just say remove username. But I don't think we need the widget span. Let me see. Yep, we'll need it. The widget span is the one that allows us to have something like this. So there are two ways you can have a row of an icon, then a text, then wrap it with a gesture detector, or just use a text button with an icon, which is much easier. And then we have our logic here on pressed. So what we want is when the user clicks on remove username, we'll call the instance of shared preference and remove the specific key, constant.pref username. So that's all it will do. In case, another check that we can do is in case there's no, how do I say it? In case there's no value in this specific key, we should not display this action thing for removing. So we'll just say pref username. If it's equal to null, we just call a concized box dot shrink, else we should display it. That means this remove username is displayed when there's a value. We wouldn't want to remove something that does not exist, right? So I think we can try and remove it and see how that looks, because yeah, let's do that. So if I click on remove username, as you can see, it has reset because the specific key has been removed. And remember, we did a check where if there's no value for this, we need to allow the user to set a username. So we need to add the logic for this. We just created the function only, but we don't have the logic. We're just returning an alert dialog. So let's proceed to design it so that we allow the user to set the username again and see how that happens. And then we proceed to the next thing. So we'll have a title. That says set username. Then we'll have, let's see, let's just style it. Next, we'll have the content, which will be a text field. Let's define this at the top. We'll define, let me give it a style. So there is our text field. Then lastly, we'll have actions. And the action will have one elevated button. This is where we'll add our logic to save our username. So let's click on it. And there we have it. So now let's add the logic. So we'll call the instance set string, because our value is of type string, constant dot username, and then we pick that value in the username controller. Dot text. Okay, so let's add a few more lines, and these lines, what they do is we just want, the moment the username is saved in the shared preference, we get to clear the text field, do a navigator.pop and say set state. So let's try that. Let's set username and enter Joy, then click on save. As you can see, we've been able to save, and when we remove, we were able to remove the username from the shared preference. So let's proceed to the next part. In the next part, we want to display the age and the weight. So we'll come here after container. we'll create a row with children. The first child will be a card that will hold a column, and then we're going to have a text that says age. Let's style it. Font size 14. Okay, so we have that. We'll finish up. Another thing that we'll have is, let's just set a space. Set a rich text. So the text will hold the value of the value of the age that we set in our shared preference. So we'll proceed to call it prefs dot get int. Remember, it was of primitive type int, and then we call the key constant dot pref age, and then we just say to string. Wait, okay, let's design the style for it. You get to see the value that we had set. Great. Then lastly, we just want to set the word years. So you'll just hold a text span that says years. Let's give it a style that will have a font size of 13, and then let's just set the color to gray. Great. Now let's finish up on designing our card. First, I want to be able to click on this card. So I'll just set an inkwell, and then just set on top. So what I want to do when I click on this, I'll be able to allow the user to update age. So we'll create this function below, in just a minute. So before we leave this place, let's first refactor this with a sized box and set the width media query dot of context dot size dot width. Let me just define this function first below so that we get to see. Sorry, should be equivalent to, it's a future dynamic update age, and we'll need the build context because will pop up an alert dialog so that the user can change their age if they want to. So there's that. Let me just do a return show dialog. Return on alert dialog. Yep. So we'll come and work on this. Back to our, let's pass in context so that we want to be able to see the UI still and see if it's okay. So there's a size, and then there is let me set the height. Yeah, and that's okay. So I'm just going to pick this size box as is, and we get to call the weight as well. Let me just do that. And then we'll just have update weight. We get to set that. So this will read weight. And then we'll have pref get double constant pref weight. Okay, and then we'll have this as kgs. Let me just set years correctly. So we'll have that, and then let's just copy this, paste it here, and just say update weight. Great. Now I just want to, the last thing I'm going to do is on the row, I'm just going to say main axis space evenly. Okay, now we're done with that. So now let's work on the functions, and the functions will be equivalent to what we have here. So I'll just copy this read alert dialog and just paste it here. And then I can just give it its own text editing controller and just call it value. It will be shared with the weight. Okay. So just down here, I'm just going to say update age, and then we'll just set this as value controller, and then I just want to specify the keyboard in type. Just say the text input will be number, just for the easy user experience. And then for elevated button, what we're going to do is we're going to set the int, and we're going to pass in the value controller, and we're going to set the key as pref age, and then we're just going to convert this, pass the string as an int, and then we just clear navigator.pop, done. And then let me just add an outline here. So what this will have will be this part where it just clears the text field and does a navigator.pop, and then our child will be console. Great. So let's try and test that. I'll click on age, and then I need to show the information, the value that is currently there. So to do that, we'll just head over to, before showing the alert dialog, we'll just say value controller dot text is equals to pref dot get int constant dot pref age to string, else return empty. So if I try that again, click on this, we get to see our 27. Let me change it to 25 and click on save, and as you can see, the data is persisted correctly. Okay, now let's proceed to the weight, and to be honest, the logic will just be the same. I'll just change the keys. So I'll just return this, and then I'll just say get double, and we're going to get the weight, and then I'll just say here weight, and then what else, set double pref weight, then we pass the string as double, and there we have it. So let's try and see how that looks. So if I click on this, it's 65. Let me set to 60 and click on save. The data is being persisted. Great. Now let's work on the next part, which is allowing the user to set dark mode or light mode. I think we have been waiting for this. So I'll just have a simple list style to do that. So I'll just say list style. I'll have a title that says const text dark mode, and then we're going to have a trailing that will hold a switch, and this switch will set the active color as our theme color, and then we're just going to proceed to add the value. So this value will be setting based on whatever is stored in the shared preference. So we'll just say pref.get bool, because you're setting a boolean, and our key is constant.pref dark theme. Great. And we want to do a check. If it's null, just set it to false. The next thing we're going to do is onChanged. Let's handle onChanged. So we're going to save the value that's actually been set by calling the shared preference instance set bool, and then we call the key, which is dark theme, and then we pass in the value. Then after that we'll just do a set state. Great. So we'll get to see the switching of on and off, but now we want the whole app to also change. So I'll click on start now on settings. So we get to see data is actually persisted because it's responding directly from shared preference, but now we want our app to actually come into effect, right? So now let's work on that. So we'll proceed to create a small logic that is equivalent to the reloading process of how Flutter reloads our apps. So it will call it app builder. Because now what happens is the next thing that we're supposed to do is we're supposed to head over to main.dart, and then on our color scheme we do our checks, right, by looking at the shared preference, our specific key. That's fine, but now it won't, because changes are happening in a different screen. For some reason the material app will not listen, is not listening to the state and won't refresh. So we want a specific logic that will be able to reload, in short, and be able to detect the changes that have been made from the material app. So that's the idea. Just let's try this and see. So I'll just come over here and I'll proceed to create a simple stateful widget and call it an app builder, and then we'll proceed to create a simple prop for that is of type function, require build context, and we'll name it builder. Then we'll come here and set it as required, this dot builder, and then we'll head over to, after this part we're just going to call a specific method that we'll find in the context. So I'll just call the name of the state class app builder state of build context. So you're just going to call a method called find ancestor state of type, find ancestor state of type. So this method is particularly useful when you need to access the state of the parent widget from a child widget. So you find that we are saving the state in the settings class, but we want it to be accessed also in the main or in the main app class. because now it's not able to see it, or the state is not able to be felt at this class. When we decide to set the preference over here, when we decide to do our check, you'll find that the changes won't happen. But the moment we add this, we want to create this, and then we're going, the moment we set state, or we set our specific dark mode, we're going to call this app builder that will refresh for us, so that the main app class will be able to receive the current state and be able to update accordingly. Okay, so I'll proceed to specify the type. The type will be app builder state. Then we close that, and then the next thing we're going to do is, let's see, unless we just decide, let's remove this. Off sorry. So after doing this, what you're supposed to do is return whatever we have just set. That's what I hadn't done. And then now in our widget build, what we're going to do, we're going to call the widget object itself, and then call the builder, and then pass in the context. And then we're going to define a simple function here and call it rebuild. So it will rebuild, the moment we call this function, it will rebuild the whole app. Just the same concept of how our apps reload whenever we save a state. So we'll just call this set state, and it's simple as that. So it's a small class that does it's more of like imitating the concept of reload. Now back to our settings, what we're going to do is we're going to call that app builder. So after set state, we'll just come here and say app builder dot state dot of context dot, and then we call this function that we have created like that. Let's see. Okay, so we were supposed to add this. Okay, that's fine. So now that we've done this, now let's head over to our main and specify our color scheme based on whatever has been set in our shared preference. So this is how we're going to do it. Going to call the instance of shared preference, get bool, because remember we are saving in the type of Boolean type. So get bool, and then we just call the constant, sorry, dot, let's import it, dot pref dark theme, and then we're just going to proceed to say if it's not equal to null, and sorry, the same value, we just enter that, and the same value is equals to true. That means it needs to be set to dark mode. We'll proceed to call const color scheme dot dark, else call color scheme dot light. So okay, that's wrong. Get boolean is equals to true. Just remove that. Okay, so that's that. So what we've done is we've just done a check. If it's not equal to null and the value is true, set it to dark mode. That means you set the dark theme to true, else set it to light. So let's refresh our app. Proceed to start now, and let me set it to dark mode. Okay, so it's still not setting. Let's see, what could be the problem? Okay, it is, but that's at the moment when I clicked on restart. That means our app builder class is not working. Why? Let's see. What if I try to refresh? It's supposed to be working. Let me refresh this whole thing. Okay, so there's something that we are missing here. I did not wrap. We need to wrap the material up with our upper builder. So I'll just wrap it up with the app builder class that we designed, and then we're going to proceed to call the builder context, and then inside here we're going to return this whole material up. So that's a big change. Then we do a return material up, and we close that. So let's try again. I'll just refresh the whole app, and then we try to test. Start now. So currently it's true. From the shared preference, the dark mode is true, and as you can see, our screen is dark. If we change it, you can see it's light. If we change it back, it's dark again. So our logic is working, which is awesome. So let me try and stick on the dark side a little bit so that we see how the whole app looks like. You can see it's able to change the font color accordingly. Now let's look at something else. After the list style, I'm just going to create a simple divider. Let's see. The next thing we'll display is another list style that represents the goal that we had set initially. So I'll just do this quickly and set it as a goal. I'll just set a font weight. Then we'll set the subtitle, and the subtitle will hold the value that's in our shared preference. So we'll just call the instance dot get string. We saved it with type string, and call the key just like that. So you could be able to see the goal that we had set, which was weightlifting. That's correct. Okay, next we're going to look at the workouts. So we want the user to set the specific workouts, and this is where we'll get to see how get string list works in shared preference. So we'll just have a text that says workout. That's just the label. Then next we're going to use one of the dependence packages that we installed, which was multi-select. So it's just a unique drop down that allows you to select multiple things within the drop down. So I'll just define it, drop down multi-select, and it has a few attributes to fill in. So our options will be constant. I need can't recall if we set the walkouts. We didn't, so we're just adding a list of walkouts that the user will be able to select from. So I'll have static const walkouts. I can add just 3. Let's have that. And then I'll proceed to call it from here, constant.walkouts. Great. Then let's look at selected values. For selected values, we'll pick from the shared preference. So it will be pref, the instance, dot get string lists, because it will be a list of strings. And then I'll just call the key constant.pref walkouts. And then we're just doing a check. If it's null, return an empty list. Then let's look at unchanged. So what we're going to do, if the user changes, we head over to update in the shared preference. So set string list. So it will save it in form of a list of type string dot walkouts. And then we're going to pass in the walkout. Let's see. String. Oh, sorry. Pref. Wow. Yeah, that's the name of the key. Okay. And then after doing that, we do a set state. Yeah, it's simple as that. Then with also the drop down, it gives you the option if there's nothing that to display, or there's nothing the user has selected. That means when it's empty, you can just say select something. Yeah, and we are done. Let me just set a padding here. That looks nice. So let's just select. So if I head over and select abdominals, even if we decide to refresh this, we can confirm if it has saved it. Start now. As you can see, it has been able to save, as you can see. And if we head over to dark mode, sorry, we still get to see our workouts. Great. Next is notifications. That's the last one actually. We just want to show that option of selecting whether you want notifications enabled or not. I'll just use this design for the list style for dark mode because it's quite similar. And then I'll just set this as notifications. And then the trailing will also be a switch. And then we'll just do a get bool pref notifications false, and then set bool pref notifications, just like that. And then I'll just remove this because it's not necessary in this setting. So if I decide to select, unselect, that's okay. But now we just want a small interface to just show the effect. So if the user enables it, we can just display for them a card for Premiere Pro, something like, I think that one will work. Just a small card, just for check. So what we'll do is we'll just define a card, and then we're going to give it the child will be a column, and then we're going to have children, and there we'll have a row that will have children, and then we just have an action chip, and our label will be a text widget that says pro, and let's just style it. font weight, and then we'll proceed to add another child. Where is it? There it is. Then let's add, let me just specify the background. And then let's have another child that says upgrade to premium. So now we get to see it. Let me set a padding here. And then what else? How does that look? Let's see. Yeah, this is okay. And then now let me set the visibility. So on the visible attribute, all I'll say is check the shared preference, pick the key. So based on whatever has been saved, that's what we'll get. If we'll so right now the notification will set it enabled. If we disable it, we won't get to see the card. If we enable it, we get to see the card. We're presuming now when you click on this, maybe it enables maybe local notifications from Firebase. That's just extra logic with third parties and all, but I just want to show that user experience. So if you disable, you won't get to see it, but if you enable, you'll get to see the specific. Great. With that, we have been able to interact with shared preferences in all aspects, from setting different primitive types to getting the different primitive types, even string list, and also removing and also clearing the shared preferences when needed. So I hope that makes sense and you've gotten to understand how shared preferences work. It's very conducive and it has very important impact in terms of if you want to handle user preferences in your apps. And also in like for example in native there's also shared preferences, but there's an advanced one version. For modern Android development, we have data store, and data store is divided into two. We have preference data store and pro data store, so check out for that as well. I may end up sharing that too if you're interested in the native side of things. But until then, we have completed on interacting with shared preference. Now that we have implemented shared preferences and seen how much it can do, and understood and appreciated the value that it plays depending on our use cases, in our case, we just created a simple user settings screen for our fitness app and showing how the different primitive types that exist in shared preferences, how to set, how to get, and also how to clear the whole shared preferences. So next thing, let's look at best practices and tips. Just a few, they're not many. So if storing sensitive information in shared preferences, it's better to consider encrypting it before storing or decrypting it upon retrieval. If you really have to store sensitive information in shared preferences, that's the way to go about it. But if you don't have to store this sensitive information, but you need to store this sensitive information, I would recommend using a different data storage solution. Next, shared preferences are not suitable for handling large amounts of data or complex objects. As you can see, it's as lightweight as it gets. It does the bare minimum or the main bare minimum work that it needs. It's very effective. I really recommend shared preferences, as I said, for use cases where you handle app state where you also handle managing user preferences, because it's little things that actually make a user come back to your application. The fact that they're able to personalize her their experience in your application, that's a win. It's a more of like a benefit in terms of user experience, and it's a bonus. So it might look like it's something small, but it's actually very effective. And lastly, removing unnecessary data from shared preferences to free up storage space and ensure a streamlined app experience. We wouldn't want to bombard shared preferences with so much unnecessary values that maybe that are not being used. So it's good to actually implement logic to either delete or update outdated or no longer needed preferences when it's appropriate. And with that, please feel free to dive into the comments below so that we can maximize our discussions, maybe certain issues or bugs that you may have experienced with shared preferences. What are your takes on it? Until then, subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you on the next one.